Welcome back. You're still tuned in to Salam Media. The name of the show is News and Views with myself, Salailo Makwidiri. And in a bit, we'll be turning our focus to the vibrant cultural tapestry of Cape Town, a city rich in history and diversity, and often referred to as the mother city of South Africa. And at the heart of the efforts to protect and celebrate this heritage is our Cape Town Heritage, or OCTH for short. They're a non-profit organization committed to preserving and promoting the stories, traditions, and art of marginalized communities of the Cape. And they do this by reclaiming narratives and creating platforms for inclusivity. OCTH is reshaping the way we view and engage with cultural heritage. And joining us this morning is Aaliyah Ahmed. She's the head curator of OCTH, and with a mission to decolonize the art world and amplify the voices of marginalized artists. Aaliyah, Jazakallah so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media. Although you're not in Cape Town, you're very far. We really appreciate you joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure's all ours. I think first and foremost, can you give us a bit more on the journey of our Cape Town heritage? How did this organization come to be, and what ultimately inspired its founding?
So the Cape Town Heritage started by the director, which is Tashneem Abrams, and she had started with an exhibition exhibiting her own work and looking at the Cape Malay tradition. And that was held at the Cape Castle. And I then joined 2 years after the sort of opening of our Cape Town Heritage through that exhibition. And even until today, I think it's just like-minded people that have a goal to preserve the Cape's diverse heritage and culture and history, and using storytelling and visual art as a means to communicate stories, and to not only just communicate stories for the sake of, but to really look at what lies at the heart of these stories. What are the issues that arise when you see these stories, and how can we, help and to contribute to a thriving community. So, every year we all, we have more, volunteers willing to assist, because I think people realize that there is a need for this type of work, where we want to, bridge the gap between, established artists as well as emerging artists, and then also just people that have a passion for art. They might not necessarily be artists, but they, do it as a hobby, and we would like to give them that platform and assist them in that, because sometimes artists, they produce the work, but they lack the maybe business aspect of selling their work, or they lack the other resources and other skills that one needs to have in order to promote their art. So we would like to act as a facilitator to get people the necessary help and requirements needed to have a show.
No, I think that's very, very important. And one thing which I found very, very interesting and important is it almost feels like at the heart of the organization is almost decolonizing, art and what it represents. And I find that very interesting, because this is a term that we use quite often, whether it's in academia, institutions of higher learning, or just institutions that are existing in South Africa, post apartheid and post colonial state. But I feel like we often fail in literal terms to explain and to enforce what that exactly means. What does it mean when we say we are decolonizing education? But from your point of view, from an artistic point of view, what does that mean? What does decolonizing art mean? Does it mean changing the way we present it, the way we curate it? Just if you can maybe expand a bit on that for me.
So I think when I was, thinking about this topic as well, for me, decolonizing the art world, and I know it's obviously a very thrown around very easily, and like you said, what does that actually mean? So I think for me and the organization, it's about increasing the visual literacy within the communities. And what does that mean? It's the idea that a lot of people, especially when I'm in the industry, people think that art is of a high class or high culture nature. And obviously there is an aspect of that with like biennales and like, very prestigious cultural institutions. But we believe that that is not where culture lies. That is a very nicely and neat package culture. But ultimately, every community has its art and has its culture. And I think for me, what decolonizing means is just about bringing it back to the people. So, for example, one of the exhibitions we did in the past was called Tulis, and Tulis is it's a verb to mean to write in the Arabic script, and it was that sort of concept that, our predecessors, when they come to the Cape, they were writing, the Malay language in the Arabic script. That itself is an art form. So even though it wasn't, okay, this is a book and pen and it's in the museum and everyone come and look, the culture was being practiced and the art itself was being practiced daily. And I think for me, it's getting into the mindset that as humans, we create. I think it's in our nature to create and to observe and to really ponder on, this world and deeper questions. And it's about recognizing that all of that is a process of art making, and it's a process of, integrating and interrogating your culture. So I think that's what it's about. So that, of course, the exhibitions and the gallery, that is one aspect of it. And it's, still important, but it's not to say that the culture and art and history are, sort of these nicely packaged things that need to go into that. And those spaces is what deems it, worthy of preservation. The whole idea of preservation is that we are constantly preserving. We are constantly having to grapple with culture or religion or just what the sort of current, trends are. So I think it's just about bringing it back to its nature of where does this culture and art come from and how was it used organically or naturally, taking away the sort of commercial spaces, but still utilizing that as a way and as a platform for these stories to be told.
No, I think you put it quite well, and I think you touched on something very, very important. Grappling with heritage and culture and religion, and one of the things that and I mentioned before, I mentioned this before on the show. One of the things that I always struggled with was seeing my people and black and brown people of this country, considering the history that we have, displaying or exhibiting their culture to people that might not necessarily understand or appreciate where it comes from. So, it might be, struggle songs or plays that, are trying to portray, the lives of black and brown people in the most disadvantaged areas of the country, or, music, that, the likes of Hugh Masekela and them used to play, and, the art, which kind of was not necessarily meant to be exhibited, but represented, certain connections to the ancestral world, or who we were as a people, and having those almost exhibited. It almost felt violent for me, like the story of Sarah Bartman, for instance, and how she was an exhibition. It was something so naked and so personal to us, and people sometimes just come to watch it for pastime and for entertainment's sake. What are your thoughts on that? As someone that's deeply involved in the preservation of culture and heritage and religion, particularly stemming from an underprivileged people, and taking it out there to the world without necessarily, understanding or knowing if it will be appreciated for what it is. Will it be mocked or looked down upon because it doesn't necessarily meet the confines of what is traditional art in the Eurocentric sense?
So I think with that, it's something that I think unfortunately, once you have to, present your culture, in an institution like a museum, it already shows that something of that lived culture is already lost, that you have to now, look to these institutions to still preserve it in a sort of, time capsule, right? So me personally, I don't agree that everything should be on display for everyone at all times. I think that there are certain things that need to be preserved, either because they have cultural a significance or they have sacred significance. I don't believe that, you know, we should, especially now because of social media, we're consuming so much of people's lives that there isn't any private or privacy to things that are supposed to be private. So my own
Or
personal
sacred, or
opinion,
sacred, yes.
it's sacred, exactly. So I don't necessarily believe that, you know, it's a free for all. And hence why I think when you do this type of work, it's very important to look at, okay, if we are, you know, approaching an organization or, you know, an institution, we have to make sure that our values align, that they are also not going to maybe misinterpret what we're trying to say or add another layer on top of that. So, but I think again, with our Cape Town heritage, as much as we obviously are wanting to get the narrative out there, our main focus is actually just trying to help our own community. And a lot of our exhibitions are more centered around, will our community get it? Not necessarily if, you know, someone from a different area, but it's about, you know, will our people understand it? And when we write, for example, when I write a curatorial, I write with that frame. I'm writing to people that understand what I'm saying. And then it's a bonus if someone maybe not from our culture or religion gets it, because we obviously want to include sort of universal principles, but that's not the goal. And I think with, you know, cultural preservation and history, I believe that the people that you're talking about need to be firm in it first before you go out and, you know, want to, you know, tell others about it. But I personally do, you know, believe that it also goes back to what is your intention behind it. I think if, you know, a culture or group of people or an ethnic group are going through a genocide or they're going through any type of difficulty, then the intention changes of, okay, we want to display the importance of these people and therefore we want to showcase what they have contributed in history and in the societies today. But that is a separate intention to then, you know, actually constantly working through your religious practice, your cultural practice daily as its own entity. I don't think that the two should always have to mix. I think there needs to be a clear distinction between what is the goal for this display and consumption and what is just the lived reality of that culture and religion in the time it lives in today.
No, definitely. And I think one interesting aspect is the fact that you guys are currently presenting a really cool exhibition. The guest Boka Poparaka, this by Yasir Boli. Can you take us a bit? Give us a bit more information on that. And for those that still want to make their way out to check it out, what can they expect?
All right, so the Guest Buka Barka is the sixth exhibition that we've managed to put together. It's very exciting. I'm very excited to work with the artist. Yasser Bouli, as an artist, he has photographed South African people through decades in apartheid, post-apartheid, in democracy. And when we were working with him and, you know, talking about what can the topic be, we saw that Buka was also very important to him and his own narrative as a photographer and also just as an individual because he grew up in Buka. And when we were looking at the images of Buka specifically, we realized that there were a lot of children at the forefront of these images. And I was very interested in that. And in those images, he follows a young boy, his name's Niaz, and he follows this boy, you know, through the daily life of a child. And he photographs him at different stages, going to school, going to madrasa, which is, you know, like the, you know, school where you learn about Islam. And then he's, you know, at his Oma's house watching TV and, you know, the food fair. And all of these things really made me think about the importance of a community in the nurturing of a child. And what happens when that community is forced to be fragmented? And how does that impact not only the community, but the future generation? Because the sort of cradle that they are nurtured in is now, it's being challenged, it's at stake. So what we did was that we looked at children as a way to understand what is happening in Buka due to the process of gentrification. Because when you look at these images, it's clear that Buka for them is just their playground. It's not too technical. It's not too, you know, like going to sort of like academically into gentrification and effects, but visually you can see like this is just a playground, and you know what is left for them if we continue to gentrify this area. And the reason why we wanted to focus on Baraka specifically was because, as you know, Bukap as a community and as a space has gone through lots of trials and tribulations. Yes, there's always been that sense of community. And when we were trying to understand like why is that the case, we realized that the concept of baraka, which is, you know, an Arabic term which translates to blessings, was apparent in that community, and it still is there today. And it's because of this baraka and the idea that despite what is going on, I'm still going to give and I'm going to prefer the other over myself. And I think that's how the community has been able to be preserved as a community and has been able to, you know, flourish and deal with the challenges today. And I think what we're trying to communicate is that baraka as a concept or an idea or a principle is it can be used to counter the sort of effects of a more sort of individualistic society and era that we live in today. And then you'll see in the exhibition that, you know, most of the images, you know, alhamdulillah, are very of a happy nature. It's, you know, things like the food fair, things that show visually a strong communal bond. But then the last three images are images where you see children in protest. You see children having to sort of run away from, you know, smoke from burning tires, and visually creates a contrast about what children should enjoy and the sort of innocence of childhood, and what childhood has unfortunately become. It's children, and we see this across the world today, having to stand up for the rights of their community, having to stand up for the rights of their land, having to stand up for their homes. So those are the two layers. And then the reason why we called it the guest specifically is because, one, when the audience comes into the space, they are the guests and they have been invited. And I think this goes to, you know, the first or second question you asked, was that we are giving them permission to sort of look at the narrative that is being captured in this frame, but it's up to them if they want to take it at face value or really interrogate what are the factors, you know, sort of behind the image or behind the scenes that are contributing to the sort of picturesque image. And it makes one reflect in terms of their own community and in terms of their own participation as active citizens in their community and societies. What role do they play? Are they just a guest, sort of just taking, or are they also, you know, lending a hand? And then, of course, as well, just, you know, the concept of hospitality is also a very important principle in Islam. And I think many people feel like guests when they are in the presence of Muslims, just because of that elevation of how people really do prefer you when you come into their home, or if you see them on the street, you do feel like you're being honored as a guest. So a lot of it, you know, obviously Bukap is the sort of local, area that we have, located the exhibition in. But ultimately, the sort of call to action is something that can be felt by many people in different communities.
No, definitely. I think it's wonderful stuff. We're going to be putting up the poster and all of the details of that exhibition. Yeah, here we go. And this is happening from the 6th to the 8th of December. And I think it's going to be a really, really interesting one. But Aaliyah, unfortunately, we have run out of time. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. And yeah, looking forward to chatting to you in the not so distant future again.
Thank you so much.
There we have it there. Aaliyah Ahmed coming to us live from Cairo out in Egypt. She's the head curator at our Cape Town Heritage. Well, they aim to, highlight the power of storytelling and making sure that, their indigenous and heritage, stories of the people of Cape Town are indeed told, and in a way that they want to, not from another person's point of view, but their own. So, yeah. Really interesting conversation. If you missed it, you can check out our Spotify, our podcast station, and also our website where you can listen to it. I think it's a really interesting one. But yeah, going to leave it there for now. Going to take a quick break. News and views continues after this.